Oh boy, what a return to action it was yesterday. Formula 1 is finally back after 7 months away from the sport we love. And that was one incredible race. So much drama, so many incidents, so many mechanical failures. That's what we're going to talk about, and we're also going to have a look at qualifying, seeing as I didn't do a qualifying review yesterday, or 2 days ago. But let's get into it. But of course, spoiler alerts are in place here for this video for all my reviews, because I don't want to spoil what was an incredible race. So if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go over, don't go to the highlights. Don't go to the highlights on YouTube or wherever. Go to the actual race, wherever it is in the world. You'll be able to find it somewhere. That was one of the best F1 races I've seen in a long time, apart from Hockenheim, Canada 2011. There's a few ones that are better than that, but it was a good race. So go check out the full race, not the highlights, if you haven't seen it already. But the spoiler is out of the way. Let's get into it. And in typical FIA and F1 fashion, there was drama before the race even started. Of course, in practice we saw Red Bull got in full Karen force there, and they asked to see the manager, and the FIA weren't having any of it. But I think Red Bull do have DAS, or well, whatever it is. Red Bull, I reckon, have it. I think what they were doing was seeing if it was allowed first, so they don't run the car and then it's illegal. So they were just testing the waters there. I reckon they'll roll out the DAS Red Bull next weekend. And that wasn't the end of the Red Bull protesting, of course. We're back in full swing, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, at the end of qualifying, we saw Valtteri Bottas go off the road at turn number 4. A lot of drivers have been doing that. He went off in the final few minutes. It may have been intentional, it may have not been. But there was yellow flags, there was dust everywhere. Hamilton should have slowed down, but he didn't, and he got himself a 3-place grid penalty. Now, the only reason is because Red Bull protested, of course, because Christian Horner is a bit of a sook, but we won't get into that today. Maybe that's a video for its own topic, but that was the drama there. Qualifying was very interesting. Here is your result. So Valtteri Bottas would remain first position, even though what happened, he still got first. He set a lap record, and Verstappen would now line up alongside him, and Lando Norris, a bit of a surprise, he slotted into third position, and Alex Albon fourth, and then there is Lewis. Of course, he qualified second. 3-place grid penalty dropped him back to 5th, and then in 6th it was Sergio Perez, and then Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari, and then Carlos Sainz, and then running out the 5th row of the grid, Lance Stroll and Daniel Ricciardo. Then we have the second half of the grid, Sebastian Vettel in 11th, which was just crazy to not even see him get into Q3. Gasly 12th, Kvyat 13th, Ocon was probably the biggest disappointment, 14th for him, Grosjean 15th, Magnussen 16th, Russell 17th, Giovinazzi 18th, Raikkonen 19th, and last place, no surprise, was Nicholas Latifi. So why don't we get into your race highlights? It was a crazy race. We saw lots of safety cars, lots of mechanical failures, as I said, and it was Valtteri Bottas that got off to a flyer. Lando Norris was in the mix for that second position. He was on the outside, and there was 3 wide further back, but it would be Max Verstappen that got that second place, Bottas in first, Norris in third. And then we saw Albon up the inside of Hamilton. Hamilton got a little bit pushed wide, and bear that in mind for later on in the race. But it was very, very interesting. We saw Lewis Hamilton hunting down Albon. He easily got by him in the end. That was third position on lap 9 of the Grand Prix. Pretty simple move. Then on lap 11, huge drama. Max Verstappen was out of the Grand Prix. What happened was, it appears that he adjusted something on his steering wheel, and that basically just sent the car into an absolute pandemic. It was not ideal at all. But then we saw Carlos Sainz going around the outside of Charles Leclerc, and then Sebastian Vettel just put it somewhere that it didn't want to be and spun himself out in true Sebastian Vettel fashion. But yeah, there was no gap there. He shouldn't have done that. He spun it before he even got it in there, so a bit silly. And we had it was Checo and Lando Norris in a bit of a battle. It was a pretty tasty one, that's for sure. Checo easily got by, but Lando had a little look under the inside of the car on lap 33. Lap 51, we saw big George Russell in a bit of drama, and was not ideal. Of course, we also saw K-Mag end up causing a safety car earlier in the race, brake failure. Same with Grosjean just before that Russell incident. He was in a bit of drama, but it was crazy stuff. Lap 54, and straight after that safety car restart, there was another safety car. They say safety cars bring safety cars, and that was definitely the case here. It was Kimi Raikkonen. It was so strange. His wheel just completely went off, and that's what we're talking about with the curbs. You cannot get on those curbs at all, otherwise you could find yourself in a bit of trouble, can't you? But yeah, it was strange. The wheel went flying. Thank God it didn't hit anyone's car. Thank God we don't have fans. But it was just strange. He went through turn 9, hit the curb, and that's all she wrote. That front right was off the car. Then lap 61, it was all on as we saw Alex Albon try to go around the outside through turn number 3, around the outside of Hamilton, but he couldn't quite do it. And this is where the big incident, the big talking point of the race happens. It was, to me, a racing incident, but there was contact around the outside through turn 4, similar to Interlagos, and Alex Albon was sent packing in the gravel. He dropped down the order. Hamilton left the gap there. To me, it's a racing incident. I don't think it deserved a 5-second penalty. But then we saw Lando Norris with a brilliant, ballsy move, and he couldn't quite pull it off. Crofty thought it was Carlos Sainz the whole time, and then he realised, and then a big move from Charles Leclerc to get up into third position, and then it was official at that point that there would be a 5-second penalty added on to Hamilton's race time. But then we saw this move, a bit of an aggressive move from Lando Norris to get up into fourth position, and that was on lap 69. Bit of contact with the two drivers. Checo had a little go around the outside of him, but he couldn't quite pull it off, and that was basically that. Alex Albon ended up parking it off to the side of the circuit, which was unfortunate for him. But this was a crazy incident. Well, it wasn't much of an incident, but Daniel Kvyat, his rear this time completely just went. It completely just went. And it was similar to what we saw with Kimi, but it was very interesting to see. And Checo ended up getting himself a 5-second penalty, I believe, as well, because of speeding in the pit lane. It might have been 10. It was either 5 or 10 seconds that he got there, but he got a bit of a penalty there. But at the end of the day, Valtteri Bottas, after 71 laps back in F1, Valtteri Bottas would get the win. And Lewis Hamilton, would he get second? No, he wouldn't, because big Lando Norris pulled something out of nowhere and got the fastest lap of the race, which meant that gap on that final lap after first sector, that was, see, it was 7/10. Of course, the 5-second penalty, Lando needs to get 7/10 out of Lewis Hamilton. And you know what, he did that. Lando Norris went on the podium. Hamilton dropped back down the order because of his penalty. How crazy is that? Lando Norris, first race of his second season in F1, and McLaren look very strong, and I'm happy to be a Daniel Ricciardo fan, that's for sure. Can't wait to see him paired up with Lando. It's going to be interesting, but at the end of the day, I don't think Lewis did deserve that penalty. But at the end of the day, he got the penalty. There's not much we can do now. And at the end of the day, I'm happy Lando got himself a podium, and he was absolutely elated. That's for sure, isn't it? That's definitely for sure. But at the end of the day, let's have a look at your retirees before we go over the actual race results. Oh boy, we saw a lot. There was only 11 finishes in this race. It was absolute mayhem for the drivers. But the first retiree was Max Verstappen. Then it was Daniel Ricciardo. He had an issue with his car. Then Lance Stroll, about 2 laps later, went out. And then Kevin Magnussen brought out the first safety car with his... he was trying to go for a move on Esteban Ocon. He just went straight on brakes, basically just let go on him, which is not ideal, but luckily the car spun around. But that did bring out the safety car. That was good for the fans, but not good for Haas. And you know what else wasn't good? Rogro ended up out later on, which is not ideal for him. 1 lap later, we saw Russell retire. Raikkonen, of course, we saw what happened with him, with the tyre basically just falling off. Albon, we know what happened with him. He ended up just parking off to the side of the circuit at turn 8. Daniel Kvyat, also talked about him. Turn 1, just basically went straight on. His rear left just basically said, sayonara, I'm not having any of this. Not having any of this at all. But absolute scenes seeing Lando get on the podium. Charles Leclerc, driver of the day for me, driver of the day any day of the week. Lando did put in a shift, but Charles Leclerc to go from 7th to 2nd in that piece of absolute turd. That's an awful car they've got there, Ferrari, and it proved to be a disappointing weekend for them. It looks like their race pace is better, but let's run over your results. Valtteri Bottas first. Charles Leclerc ended up 2.7 seconds behind in second. Lando Norris, of course, he got third. He was 5.4 seconds down. Lewis Hamilton ended up 5.6 seconds off the pace. Carlos Sainz 5th. Perez 6th with his penalty. Gasly 7th. Esteban Ocon 8th. Giovinazzi 9th, so Alfa Romeo get points. Not too hard today, you just gotta live to fight another day, haven't you? Sebastian Vettel got 10th, which is not ideal. The fact that he got 10th and everyone else was retiring, that says something about him and that car. And then we saw Nicholas Latifi 11th, his first race in Formula 1, and he nearly got in the points. Only issue is he was last place, 31 seconds off the pace, which was interesting. And 12th was Kvyat, Albon, Raikkonen, Russell, Grosjean, Magnussen, Stroll, Raikkonen, Verstappen. They are all your retirees from the Grand Prix. So that's your race review from the action, of course. How remarkable of a race was that? What a return. It was worth the wait. I cannot wait for next weekend. And remember, the teams stay in Austria and we'll have the Styrian Grand Prix. All the action will be on here. Race reviews and race previews. and it's going to be a bit of an interesting weekend. Hopefully they change the ERS, maybe one less. We have 3 DRS zones, make that 2 and I'll be happy. But great race, hopefully next weekend's even better. But I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'll be back next weekend, well, Friday, just a few moments before FP1, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.